Hello, welcome to BDubz DM21. DM21 stands for Dungeon Master with a 21-sided die. It's always stood for that. And even though I've used that tag and that moniker for quite a long time, I haven't done much D&D on any of my channels or any of my creative endeavors at all. And naturally, I figured 5-6 years into this game, maybe I oughta live up to that expectation and play some D&D. So last week we began our first solid week of dungeon mastering, and today I introduce our series DM Diaries with your boy BDubz. BDubz. That's DDubz. All good. How you guys doing? Guys, we got a lot to talk about. I played 3 full sessions for our session 1 with 4 different players for each session. 12 players, 1 opening scenario, 3 different possibilities they could engage with, and as well as a few hidden puzzles, riddles, flavor that they could have found. And some of them did find them. How about that? Now, naturally, if you didn't see the episodes, it's okay. They're all streamed on Twitch, and they're also uploaded to YouTube. So you can watch them whenever you want. It's all up to you. You can just tune in and have fun, and that's great. But we're going to be talking about sessions 1A, 1B, and 1C. 12 different players, 4 players per group. And we had this opening scenario in our Strixhaven campaign in which the students arrived for their first day of school. It was great. There was going to be an orientation, there was a party, a festival, and there was trouble and mystery. And it went well. Overall, working with 12 different players over the course of 3 days, roughly 14 hours of Dungeons and Dragons played between the 3 sessions. It was, quite frankly, fun and invigorating, and it was good to kind of get back into the saddle of doing DM things and finally playing proper D&D on the stream. It was excellent. I had a great time. But today I wanted to talk about how do you run 12 players through an almost near identical scenario while giving them all completely different encounters, different NPCs to interact with, and at the same time, allow for surprises and things to happen. So, let's get on with Session 1A. If you guys have not seen Session 1A, it is uploaded to YouTube, so you can check it out now if you want to know precisely what I'm talking about, but naturally this will contain spoilers for the campaign, so, I don't know, maybe go check it out if you haven't had the chance already, or if you're here to learn, well then great, just keep listening. So in Session 1A, we had our students do their introductions, and I always like to start a campaign off with sort of a brief one-on-one, here's a look at where you're coming from, sort of opener. And the reason why is because I tend to find that when you give your players an opportunity to role-play a portion of their backstory, they're back at home, mom and dad is there, we're seeing life as it was. This implements something known as the hero's journey element to classic storytelling. If you take a look at, for example, Star Wars: A New Hope, where does it begin? Well, yes, it does begin on a Star Destroyer going after Princess Leia, and there's a lot of action. But the first time we meet our hero, we meet him at home. And he's there with his family and on the moisture farm, and he's doing his thing, and it's life as usual until one day he procures 2 droids, which then change his life forever as they lead him towards his destiny of being a Jedi in far-flung places. And now today he is a legend. Luke Skywalker is a legend. I mean, everybody knows about Luke Skywalker and his many exploits around the galaxy, and it's amazing. Well, I think it's good to give your players that opportunity to understand that you're playing a game in which you're going to be a hero, an adventurer. You're going to do many crazy things. You have a moment of, hey, this is life as I know it. This is where I'm coming from. And I think it's pretty awesome to be able to give that to each of your players. And so I begin each session with that. So right away, it puts your players into the frame of mind of their character, and you set up the hero's journey for them, because we got to see what life was like. Now, oftentimes, I use this as sort of like a departing, hey, I'm getting ready to go off to go to school. Sometimes for some characters, I really can't do one. We had that come up in session 1B with a character named Goober, who was a goblin. And his backstory pretty much took us into immediately appearing at Strixhaven. He was a goblin. He was sort of the black sheep of his goblin gang, and they were going to go rob a temple. They were like, oh yeah, we're going to go rob this temple. But Goober noticed that the temple seemed like it was well lit. It was well lived in, and everything was sort of clean. And he was like, people live here. There's something going on here. We shouldn't take anything. Naturally, his goblin brethren took offense to this, beat Goober up, and then went to try to take something. And it just so happened that the temple they were at was from some type of celestial goddess of some kind. And she took pity upon Goober, healed him up, and then made a celestial pact with him. Goober's now a warlock, and then zipped him off to Strixhaven, to which he appears and says, Goober think this bad idea too. And it was great. We had a good time. And so naturally, since he had that story set up for me already, and I'm not going to role play him getting beat up, I asked him, I said, go ahead and tell us your backstory. So he told us his backstory, and I said, fantastic. And I said, no, normally I do a one-on-one with you. Because of the nature of your backstory, we're going to hold you off for a bit. We're going to set you off to the side real quick. Went through the other players' backstories, did their one-on-ones, came back to these players and let them embark upon their adventure sort of together. Except for one dude who decided that since he was an Owlin, he was going to fly the main campus. Well, don't worry. I had a way to get him to connect with the other adventurers, and that way was Goober. So in the case where someone's backstory, for example, just makes it impossible for you to do that one-on-one session, you're going to essentially have that character show up in a very dramatic way, to give that character a moment to explore his personality, a moment to explore his new surroundings. In the case of Goober, that was pretty easy. A celestial being of some kind teleported him to Strixhaven, and so the nature of the backstory did not say anything at all about how Goober appeared in Strixhaven, just that he was teleported to Strixhaven. So I came up and proved the idea that Goober appeared in a lightning bolt. Yes. Yes, which just so happened to strike near good old Ardberth, whom I told to make a dex saving throw, which luckily he saved. But I did force him out of the sky, and so Ardberth, our Owlin rogue, is there. We have Kira, our Aasimar, Pangaean Aasimar. That's important. We're going to talk about setting in a little bit. We had our Pangaean Aasimar there. That was excellent. And then, of course, we had Tali of Athreus. He is a Lalafell. And they were all there for when Goober gets shot out of the sky. Beautiful. Goober appears, and naturally the Owlin's mad and threatens to hurt him, to which Goober's player, Alan, brilliant roleplay, he's going to go hide. Of course he's going to go hide. He's very scared. He just got shot out of the sky, teleported. He learned Boom Finger. He had his goblin fellows just beat the crap out of him. He's going through an experience. And that gave an excellent opportunity for Kira to sort of play to her edge, which is a very compassionate, empathetic, caring, selfless individual. And then Totally is like, this is fun. It's a Lalafell. This is fun. I'm along for the ride, man. What's going on over here? You know, and Ardberth's mad, and now Ardberth feels like a jerk. And we just had a great time with it. The whole thing was just brilliant. But in a way, Goober still got his one-on-one. He got a good 5 to 10 minute roleplay session where he gets to see that immediate moment of his arrival. And I think that satisfied the requirement of putting the character in time and place. I was a little nervous about it because I could hear a slight disappointment in Alan's voice when I said, okay, we're going to move on from Goober, and I didn't have a one-on-one for him, and I can understand that. And I was a little disappointed, so I wanted to do a one-on-one with Goober. I still want to do a one-on-one with Goober. I love Goober. But that's the whole thing, is that when we talk about beginning D&D campaigns, which is what we did, I think it's really important for the players to get a chance to settle into their character without others taking the spotlight. I think they all need their opportunity to be acquainted with their character prior to being acquainted to the world. So the next thing we got to talk about is, where do we start off our players? When we're doing something as ambitious as we are right now with a West Marches styled Strixhaven campaign, which is already stupid. Stupid ambitious. Especially the way that we're doing it. With 12 players. When we're already doing something stupid ambitious, starting in a tavern is about the dumbest thing you can do. And Matthew Koval, who I love to death, and I watch a lot of his videos, and I love him so very much. We do have a few differences of opinion, and this is one of them. And the reason why I say that is because when you have your players start in a tavern, we kind of rob them of that opportunity to meet. Unless it's like you walk into a tavern and you got a note from so-and-so who asked you to embark on a quest from him. It's your first time meeting him. Go and introduce yourself to, whoever. And then you kind of set them off that way. But they still had sort of that inciting incident happen already where they knew they were going to be hanging out together and they had purpose, rhyme, reason. They knew they had to be there. And then usually we know what's going to happen. The other adventurers are going to come in one by one, and then they're going to chat, and then someone's going to start some trouble, and then there's a bar fight. We've all seen that about a million times. In fact, I'm more than confident that in my Dragon Strike game, this little tabletop sort of D&D role-playing game that you could buy, it had a VHS tape that you could play with it. Look it up, Dragon Strike. It's awesome. There was one of the scenarios where you start in a tavern, and I think it was the first one I ever played, and that was how it went. And so every time I see it, it's just kind of like, yeah, I've kind of grown from that as a kid personally, but hey, more power to you. The problem with the tavern scenario is that it starts too small. Do I agree you should start small in terms of scope and overall feeling of what's happening in your world? Yes, I think you should start small. The problem with a tavern is that when you're talking about a space, and maybe we can bring this up here, and I'll just quickly. We have paper, boys and ladies, of course. But, we have a little space here, and I'm going to draw this little square. Okay? This is your tavern. Okay? It's brilliant. Okay? That's your tavern. Okay? And my pen's running out of ink, clearly, so this might be a terrible illustration, but I'm going to leave it in anyways. I'm not going to edit these. There's no way I'm going to edit these. But you kind of get the idea. And then here is sort of the whole scope of what I think needs to be done in an opening scenario. We need to introduce the characters to time and place. We need to introduce the characters to some of the mysteries that are in the world. We need to introduce the characters to themselves and to their compatriots. We need to give the characters motivation in order to go off and do what they want to do. And we need to do it all without railroading them or making them feel like they do not have a choice. So the first thing that we do when we begin a campaign, other than those one-on-one introductions and those challenging one-on-one introductions, is we try to introduce them to the world. So in this particular case, Strixhaven, I told them that it was tradition, this is not in the source material, I made this up, that they walk from where they get dropped off at in their carriages to the biblioplex for orientation. I told them it's about 1.5 mile walk. And the idea was that their characters were supposed to reflect upon themselves and the beginning of their journey. This is a year one tradition. And then as they arrive to the biblioplex at the amphitheater for their orientation, I went on and I told them that they were going to be listening to an orientation, and I wanted to engage them right away. And this is the thing, you got to engage them. When you do your setting building and your world building and things like that, you gotta make sure they're excited. So there needs to be mystery going on during an orientation. What's happening? Who is this guy that's talking to us? So in our particular story, Valentine, Dean of the Vein, is dead. He was killed by Draven Crift and his compatriots of the Extraordinary League of Students, or the Magnificent Dozen, or whatever you call them, after it was discovered that Valentine was essentially sacrificing students for weird experiments for some unknown end. His plot was thwarted, and Valentine, Dean of the Vein, is no more. So naturally, that happened the year before. You get to school, and that's a big ordeal. There's a lot of missing students who are never going to be found again. There's a few students who survived these experiments. Some of them returned to classes, some of them didn't. You then have this overarching mystery of, well, what was Valentine trying to do? And then you kind of have this sort of moment where, all right, this has to impact campus culture in some way. How? And we have to introduce all of these concepts to the players immediately, but in a very interesting way. So the first thing I did was I said, all right, who's going to tell them about Valentine? Who's the super influential dude that's going to show up at orientation and people are going to respect and listen and understand? And that was Teva, the voice of the founders. Pretty awesome concept. And because the voice of the founders really doesn't talk to students, he's normally around just to talk to the deans. He serves as the voice of the founder dragons. And when there's a big catastrophe or something crazy happening on the campus grounds, he kind of shows up and he brings everybody into order. Well, obviously, Dean Valentine being involved in these heinous crimes and murders against the students, that was a big deal. And the fact that it was students who ended up uprooting this plot and then taking him out, it's even more embarrassing. So it's none other than Teva, the voice of the founders, who shows up to give the opening remarks about what happened in the previous year and what the school was doing and how they were going to essentially respond to this catastrophe. And I set him up that when he came up to the stage to talk and he introduced himself, that there were murmurs and whispers throughout. and everybody was kind of talking and chatting, like, who's this? That's Teva. Like, I wanted everybody to know this guy was very important. He wasn't just some random NPC that was coming up to talk today. No. This dude, you're probably never going to see again throughout the rest of the campaign. He's not really somebody who shows up. This is your one time to see him. Hope you liked it. And he's the voice of the founders. Getting close to him is getting close to the founder dragons themselves. It's a big deal. And this is unheard of. This is wild. This is, okay, there's some crazy things. This keeps your players super duper engaged. You're doing your plot and setting and your hooks to get them into, well, what is going on here? You know, who are the Dragon's Guard and why are they on campus? And they are dressed in plain clothes. Oh, wow. So we won't know who they are, and they're investigating the Valentine situation. Okay. All right. Neat. All right. So now we know that there's this group on campus, the Dragon's Guard. We won't be able to pick them up from the crowd. We're not supposed to interfere with them, but maybe they might play a role later on in the campaign. Interesting. Okay. Write down that note. Watch out for Dragon's Guard. They're going to be around. Then the next thing that I did was I actually went and did some regular orientation stuff. I talked about, hey, yeah, you guys are going to be living out of the central dormitories up in the Northeast. I had none other than Miss Mavinda Sharpbeak show up to do it, and I loved it. Mavinda is one of my favorite characters to roleplay. Trust me, just ask Ardbirth. Ardbirth went to detention in between the sessions, and he got to find out what a real detention session was like with Mavinda. Let me tell you something, he will not be wanting to repeat that ever again. I don't think we'll see him in detention anytime soon. So, it was a good session. I'll be reading his detention session in its entirety in our Between the Sessions video, where I wrap up what happened between the sessions. But anyways, I continue. Then the next thing I did is that our Strixhaven is not in the Arcavia plane. All right, it's realm. It's in my own realm. So what I did was I took Strixhaven and all of its wonderful source material, and it's got a good chunk of it, and I just plopped it bloop, right in my world, which is Pangaea. Pangaea is my world. It's a world of my own making. I've been working on Pangaea, conceptually writing stories in Pangaea now for almost 15 years. I know that world very well. I have my own races that inhabit that world. Some of them are very familiar to D&D races, so the ones that are super familiar, I pretty much just kept the name, but they do have minor differences as far as their features go. So, for example, one of my races borrows heavily from the Dragonborn, except them having tails is very, very common. They tend to be thinner as opposed to bigger and heavier. And some of them, their rare feature, some of them might even have little wings that kind of come out. Some of them even bigger. Make it more like the idea of like Aasimar wings. But they're thinner for flight. Because, yeah, I really like that concept of a lean Dragonborn with horns and tails. Other peculiar features with them are that some of their tails are forked, for example. But those are Pangaean Dragonborn. That's what they look like. It's pretty cool. Anyways, so I've been building this whole world, and this is my first time I'm really bringing players into Pangaea proper. And the neat thing was that I had Strixhaven, the Strixhaven source material, to kind of layer on top of it to try to make sense in this introduction, because Pangaea is a very different world than your traditional D&D settings. And this Strixhaven campaign gave me a bridge. It gave me a bridge to Pangaea. Awesome. And so the next thing I did was I had Augusta Twillis, actually, Dean of Order in Lorehold. I had her come up and do sort of like, hey guys, we're in Pangaea, and I'm going to tell you some things about Pangaea. And I'm going to engage you, because she's very strict. and she will not deal with any tomfoolery or take it lightly. She's very strict. She's very much an order-based character, very lawful good. She ain't gonna deal with your crap or your shenanigans. Anyway, so Augusta Tullis comes up, and she tells everybody about Pangaea. She talks about the people who live on Pangaea. And then she says that Strixhaven is a well-kept secret, and that 99.9% of Pangaeans don't know that Strixhaven is in their realm. And then she looks directly at one of my players, Kira, the Pangaean Aasimar. She's a cleric. And there she is, sitting like an oddball with her platinum blonde hair, white wings, and her glowing blue eyes that actually have like what seemed like vapor coming out of them. I really wanted to play that out. She is Pangaean, and I really wanted to accentuate certain features of her player race. And her eyes fall directly on her. And so naturally now I'm engaging the players yet once again. And I'm engaging the players yet once again because I'm trying to make sure they're paying attention, they're having a good time, and they're feeling included when we're going through all of these heavy story beats and these heavy story notes. I want them to feel like they're actually there and that the world isn't just sort of playing out before them, but rather they're in the world respects their presence, and then they can impact the world. So I said, Kira, what do you do? And, she told me, well, Kira kind of just sort of sits back and gets nervous and shy and kind of looks away a little bit. And that was fine. If she wanted to do something a bit more noteworthy or something a bit more like say something or maybe even stand forward and really raise those wings out like, yeah, I'm Pangaean and I'm here. What's up? If she wanted to do that, she could have done that, but she played to her character, which was excellent. And so, that didn't really make too much of a scene. But after Augusta Tullis goes through and she tells everybody you're forbidden from leaving Strixhaven jurisdiction, and it's against the rules. You can't do it. It'll be bad. Stop it. Don't do it. Right, as you should. She goes on and she says, are there any questions? Have I made myself clear? That's what she says. And the first group, I gave every group an opportunity to say something, but it was the first group that really took advantage of it. And Phoebus, our fighter dwarf in the back, he's in the way back. He goes, yes, ma'am. And I'm like, everybody else in the crowd goes, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. That was the right thing to say. Yes, ma'am. And so for every session after that, when we got to that part, I would have her ask the question and see what people do. Most people like, we stay silent, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I would tell them, yeah. So a dwarf in the back just goes up and goes, yes, ma'am. And Navosi, I love him. He's the guy who plays Phoebus. He's always in the chat. He goes, that's me. I got a cameo. I got in this session. Yes, you impacted the world. Now I have shown my players, essentially, that you can impact the world. That little things that you do might show up again. And that was the whole point, the whole purpose. I want them to know that this world is not static. It changes based on your decisions, based on what you do. And then we get to the problem of Session 1C. You know who you are. So Session 1C, some of them had seen Sessions 1A and 1B. Don't blame them. I would have watched it too. And that's fine. I recognize that. And I was ready for it. So Session 1A was late getting to their orientation. Session 1B arrived at orientation on time. And Session 1C was bound and determined to get to orientation early. they ran. All 4 of them ran to orientation. So that left me in a bit of a pickle. And the reason why it left me in a bit of a pickle was because if I were not prepared for them to arrive to the Biblioplex early, oh my gosh, they would have nothing to do until orientation started, and we got rid of that opening chapter bit that they could have had and should have had and enjoyed. Well, shoot. What do I do? Ha, don't worry. I had something planned. In case they got to the Biblioplex early, I did have a little something planned that anyone standing in the Hall of the Oracles, should the party arrive early, should they be among some of the first students to actually enter the Biblioplex, which they were, they would trigger an event. Only those who were in the Hall of the Oracles. So we had 2 players say, we're going to go off and read some books. All right, go off and read some books. Have a good time, buddy. And that's great. Good role play. They say that, hey, I got some time to kill. Let's go read some books. We're here at a magic school. Let's go check out some books. Yeah, go check out some books. Have fun. And so they're off checking out their books, having a good old time. And then 2 others went forward through the Hall of the Oracles. And when they went through the Hall of the Oracles, suddenly they experienced a sensation of incredible dread. It just so happens that one of my characters, one of my players who was there, has a character with a weird, sort of mark tattoo thing that changes based on energies and natural energies and things like that and what happens around them. And the mark, basically imagine a tattoo that changes based on how you feel today, I imagine a lot of us could use those. But yeah, he has this tattoo that just changes. And he goes, yeah, I got this tattoo on my back. It changes when things like this happen. Can you tell me what it looks like? I'll wait. Little did he know, I was prepared. I didn't expect to show the image that session, but I had an image in mind as sort of a picture of what it was that happened. And luckily for me, it was quite tribal in nature, and luckily for me, it fit perfect. So I had to go grab the image real quick, and then I had to make sure I pulled it out of any website I was using, and then isolate it so that way there's no context for what it is. And then I threw it up on stream, and he looked at it, and now we're on to this weird puzzle. And the next thing I know, we have a half-orc picking up a dragonborn because he wants to mage hand a snarl. I'm like, okay, you mage hand the snarl, nothing happens. Okay, I was just checking, experimenting. I'm like, what were you expecting to happen? Look, guys, I'm more than happy to we have a cool idea to make it work or do something cool with it, right? But my gosh. Mage handing the snarl, really? That's what we got? That's what we got. That's what we got? I'm kidding. I love you. I love you, Stormsword. I'm messing with you. But yeah, this group in particular wanted to challenge me. And this is sort of was the original purpose of this video, was to talk about this group. Because after that, they went through orientation, and then they came out into what we had, which was a festival. Now, this was sort of like the tavern. Now that we've had our one-on-one sessions, we've had a meeting point, we've had setup, now we're in a tavern, but not just any tavern. This is a large festival. There's mini games, there's all sorts of different events that are going on. You can interact with any of them. There's characters for them to meet. Session 1A got to meet Fizzy Ben. Fizzy Ben was sitting there setting up a beer pong game, and our players got to go play beer pong. That was cool and fun. We had to make some con saving throws to see if they were getting drunk or not. And meanwhile, the bard in the group did a stage performance and then got invited to go check out a rehearsal with a bunch of cheerleaders. It was awesome. Great introduction. The players had a chance to really get into character. Session 1C, one of my players, his character goes, I want to see all the tents in the festival. Okay, then. So they went and they saw all the tents of the festival. Every single one. And luckily, I was ready for all of it. They did not get into all of the fun Easter eggs, though. There were some, I don't call it Easter eggs, but there were some really cool things they could have ran into and did, but they didn't engage with those cool things. They even walked by what, in my mind, was the coolest thing. I described a character to them, and they were like, that's cool. They just walked by him, and I'm like, you have no idea who you just walked by. It was awesome. So they didn't get everything, which makes me feel great. Because I was like, this group, man, they wanted to trigger every little event. They wanted to see every little thing. They wanted to do these guys are, this session 1C group was, they're achievement hunters. They like to 100% their games. Hey, look, these players are great. I love them. All right, I'm not complaining. It's just like, these are the ones that are going to test your DM chops. So therefore, they always play third. No, I'm kidding. Just Storm Sword. He always plays on Sunday from now on. Gives me a chance to warm up and prep for him. Anyways. But that's the thing that I really wanted to get into is, like, you got to do this opening scenario, but you have some players that they want to tear apart the world. They want to go off the beaten path. They want to go and do things that they feels like, I want to feel free in this world. And let them. Oh my gosh, let them. But I need to end this video, so I want to get to my point. How do you rein those players in? How do you get them to go on your adventure? Well, for the most part, by the way, Storm Sword's not combative or difficult to play with. He's just highly inquisitive, and he wants to know about your world. He's one of the best players you can have at your table because he actually loves and appreciates the world that you're building for him, and he wants to interact and engage with it. That's awesome. I love him for it. Now, that won't stop me about complaining about him because he's truly testing my creative limits, but that's fine. How do I get him to go where he wants to go? Well, he told me over and over and over again that his character is super interested in Quandrix and Quandrix simulations. And he told me over and over and over and over and over again that he really wants to be under the tutelage of a certain teacher. He wants to meet this teacher. This teacher's like a hero of his. And he told me over and over and over and over and over again that his character is really into the Dragon's Guard and history. So, cool thing, we already introduced the Dragon's Guard to the world, so his character is immediately invested because there's actual Dragon's Guard around campus. Nice. All right, so he's already invested. But the other thing is I needed to get him out of the festival and then into something more interesting so we could set up some future plot hooks. And so I said, okay, we could do this. So the event that they're going to trigger when they come, every group had an event that was tailored to the character interests of the party. Every group had an event that was tailored to the character interests of the party. Let me say this again. Every event that was triggered was tailored to the character interests of the party. Know your characters. So when they were approached by this nerdy little Owlin kid and stoner kid Kyle comes up and goes, hey guys, we were talking and we got this thesis that we were working on. It's virtual. It's a simulation, and we're gonna have you guys come in and test, and we'll pay you 10 gold pieces. Would you come on by, go with us? It'd be cool. Now, normally the players don't want to separate on session 1. That's usually a momentum killer towards getting towards better and more exciting, interesting content. But you throw in a little gold for the people who may not be interested in simulations. But here is Belai. He's learning about, oh, there's a simulation I can get into, and like the biggest draw was, yeah, it's basically a test of your power. You go in there and you fight, and without fear of death. So the orc who's in the party goes, I can fight all I want without fear of death. And Kyle's like, yeah, dude, it's rad. Like, okay. So the orc was on board. Meanwhile, Belai's like, yes, this is like all I wanted. Belai's on board. All right. And then the other two characters, these are my more passive players. They're along for the ride. Matt Colville puts it like you have your audience players and you have your player players. Love them both dearly. And there's nothing wrong with having an audience player. An audience player just loves being in there. He's just having a good time. He's happy to be there. He's enjoying himself. Everything's great. Player, right? These are the guys who are going to be actively trying to engage with your world and make changes and discover and learn. If you have 12 players, all they want to do is engage and tear apart your world. Let me tell you something. They will challenge you. It's nice having a few audience players, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll go along with this. This will be fun, and they just want to play D&D and have fun in your world, and they're having a great time just being there. So we let them be. It's okay. So yeah, it was down. So we were good to go, and they show up and they do the simulation, which was supposed to end up at a TPK, and the simulation was supposed to kill them all. I built it for that purpose, but there was one moment where we got to do something really cool, and that was when Belai pushed an enemy off the grid. Now, the reason why the grid in Simulated World are so small compared to my other battle maps, which I make really big, is because I wanted to give the very clear picture that in a simulated reality, you can clearly see the barriers of the simulation. That you understand that it's a simulation. Your characters see that it's a simulation. You know it's not real life, and that there is an out-of-bounds area. I kind of gamified the world because it's a simulation. And so when he hit an enemy off the board, I said the enemy falls out of reality and shatters digitally. And then immediately Belai's like, hey guys, this ain't looking good. What if we jump out of bounds? And so then we have this weird, crazy scenario where you have players who are trying to be heroic heroes, adventurers, having a good time. And Turk, he's down to his last, he's the half-orc barbarian. He's down to his last HP. He ain't looking good. Meanwhile, we have Bray, our elephant man wizard, unconscious, failing his save throws, by the way. It wasn't good. We have Archibald, our human wizard, who decided it would be a good idea to lay prone in swamp water. And I was like, are you sure you want to do that? And he goes, yeah, I'm sure. And then the other players are like, dude, I don't think that's a good idea. He goes, no, I'm going to do that. So he was sinking into the swamp. That was fun. Who lays prone in the middle of a swamp? I don't know. I mean, I was half tempted to have him start rolling saves against getting a disease or something. Oh my gosh, it was bad. Anyways, so he's lying prone in a swamp, and here's Turk here, like, what happens if I jump out of bounds? He's down to his 1 HP. I gave them this sort of idea that suddenly the simulation was dangerous. They thought it was dangerous. That was the cool part. And so Turk jumps out of the reality. Oh my gosh, I love this so much. He jumps out of the reality, and I said, okay, so you want to jump out of bounds? He goes, yep, I want to jump out of bounds. All right, fantastic. You jump out of bounds. And I say nothing. And he goes, okay, is that it? Yep, that's the end of your turn. Oh, okay. And I go to the next person. And so now nobody knows what happened to this half-orc because they're now in two separate realities. One's in a simulated reality, one's an actual reality. And the one from actual reality is not coming back for whatever reason. And I told them the reason later through roleplay and things like that. But they had this whole thing. It was so good. And it was so good. And eventually, it's down to one enemy creature left, and Archibald. Archibald, who I love the role play through every bit of that encounter. Archibald's a coward. He's never been in a fight before. Bloodry, his player, told us that, through role play. He's like, Archibald's like, I've never been in a fight before. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is so weird. I'm so out of my element. But hey, if there's ever a time for me to learn or get into a fight, it's in a simulated reality. So I'm in. And yeah, he would cast a spell and run, cast spell, run, cast spell, hide behind somebody, cast spell, lay down in the swamp. I mean, to Bloodry's credit, incredible roleplay. Absolutely incredible roleplay for this character because it's even in the combat, it's even in the melee that this is happening. So full credit to Bloodry for playing this way. I loved it. And then eventually it's just down to him and the creature. Everybody else is either unconscious. I said we have a table rule that I roll your death saves. And if there gets to the point where you need to make a death save, and if it fails, you die, I tell you to roll it. And so when it got to rolling a death save again for Bray, Dabita, the player, I said, Dabita, I need you to go ahead and roll a d20 for me real quick, please. And he rolls, and it very clearly fails. I said, okay. They're in a simulated reality. They had no fear of dying. I told them this before they even went in. So, but I let them go through that moment of, did I just die on the first? Technically, you did. But he was fine. And so here's Archibald all by himself. And he's literally running to a corner of the map where I happened to put a tombstone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude is running to his grave. Like, it was sort of like you couldn't write it any better than how it happened. Like, I swear, it looks scripted. It's not, but it looks scripted. He's running to a grave, to a literal grave. And the creature who's attacking him misses, and he turns around, and he firebolts it, and he gets the kill, and he wins. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. We had this character who was running from every fight. He was doing something, then running, to the point of getting stuck in the mud where another character had to take an action to literally lift him out of the mud. And then he's the last man standing and then gets the win, secures the victory for the party. And we pull them out of the reality. And we carry on with the rest of the story. But that was our first session in a nutshell. With characters and players who will surprise you and will do things off the beaten path and will challenge you. It was an incredible adventure. All three of those sessions were awesome. We had exploding orcs. We had cheerleaders with way too powerful magic. We had crazy cameos from other realms. And the players were thoroughly invested in the world with only a 4-hour session. To the point where when we got to between the sessions, every single player, for the most part, was chomping at the bit to roleplay, to engage with the world, to go on investigations, to the point where I'm probably going to have to upload another 50-minute to an hour-long episode describing what happened between the sessions. Yeah, look forward to that. That's coming next. But it's been wild. Now, if you're coming here just wondering, hey, how do I start a campaign? How do I do this? I'm a brand new DM. I don't want to do the tavern setting, whatnot, etc., etc., etc. do yourself a hot favor and watch session 1B. You do not need to see 1A in order to watch 1B. You can watch 1B, and that's fine. That's the beginning of 4 characters, and I do that whole setup fully. If you want to see a crazy session with people who are nuts and want to explore everything, session 1C should be uploaded either later today or tomorrow. But in any case, you could check those out. Those are out there. I think those are all incredible examples of how to do it. Am I perfect? No. Did I make some mistakes? Yeah. But those are definitely the sessions that I would recommend checking out when you get the opportunity to do so. That's a really good place to go. Also, if you guys like this kind of content and you just want to hear DMs talk about how they're going through their campaigns with actual examples from their campaign while it's still fresh in our heads, hey, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Love to have you. And check out some of their other content that we're doing full uploads between the sessions and DM diaries. Yeah, I hope this was helpful for you all. Sort of introduce you to my mind and why I DM the way that I do. Maybe you might want to take some of these ideas. Maybe you have some feedback for me. Maybe I'm wrong. Fight me. Tell me why starting in a tavern is such a good idea. Please, please. I want to hear about it. And here's the truth. If your players are having fun, you're not wrong. I just know that me as a DM would not have fun starting in a tavern. I just wouldn't. It's kind of boring. I'm just being real. It's just, that's me though. But it's up to you. In any case, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you so much for watching this. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know how you guys started your campaigns. I want to know. Till next time, guys, have a good one.